Welcome to The Open Door, right here on Chesterton Radio.
Good evening, everyone.
We are coming to you live from Atchison, Kansas on a really quiet evening.
Very quiet. Just the lamplight on in the studio right now.
Yeah, it's the perfect atmosphere for what we're going to dive into tonight. So pull up a chair, get comfortable. We are doing a deep dive radio discussion into something truly extraordinary.
Oh, absolutely extraordinary.
We are going back to a very specific moment in time, November of 1941. And we're exploring a historic broadcast by Norman Corwin.
The great Norman Corwin.
Right, the absolute master of the medium. The play is called Psalm for a Dark Year. And, just to set the scene for you listening at home, imagine you are sitting in your living room in late 1941.
The radio dial is glowing.
Exactly, the amber dial is glowing, casting these long shadows on the floor. And the world outside your window is, it's teetering on this terrifying edge.
Teetering is the right word. I mean, the news from Europe is just an unrelenting nightmare at this point.
London is being heavily bombed. The Blitz is happening.
U-boats are crawling all over the oceans.
Right, and here in America, the public is holding its breath. We're totally fractured by these huge debates over isolationism versus intervention. And, of course, nobody knows that the attack on Pearl Harbor is just weeks away.
Weeks away. It's haunting to think about.
So you turn on your radio, maybe expecting another grim news bulletin or, a light dance tune to numb the anxiety.
It's something to distract you.
But instead, you hear this broadcast.
Yeah.
And it immediately summons you to what is basically a massive metaphysical dinner party.
It's such a jarring transition for a listener, right? But that auditory whiplash, that's exactly what made Corwin's work with the Columbia Workshop the vanguard of American broadcasting.
It really was. So let's unpack this. Our mission tonight is to explore this radical, almost defiant approach to gratitude that this play constructs.
Because it asks a seemingly impossible question.
Yeah. How do you give thanks when the world is burning? Which is literally a line from the play. The dialogue explicitly says, famine grins in every land.
It strips away all those polite, sanitized versions of gratitude we're so used to.
Right, this isn't the holiday commercial gratitude.
No perfectly ironed sweaters and smiling over a golden turkey here.
Definitely not. This is an exploration of what gratitude sounds like in a dark year. Finding hope without slipping into, naive optimism.
Toxic positivity. Yeah.
Exactly. So to really get the gravity of this, we have to talk about Corwin himself. Who was Norman Corwin to a 1941 audience?
Well, Corwin was essentially the poet laureate of American radio.
The poet laureate. I love that title.
It's incredibly fitting. He wasn't just a writer filling time between soap commercials. He looked at the radio and saw this limitless democratic canvas.
Theater of the mind.
Yes. He believed this little wooden box in millions of living rooms could deliver poetry and civic reflection and this profound spiritual longing straight to the masses.
And he wastes zero time setting that massive stage in this broadcast. It opens with this universal invitation. A narrator calls for the living and the dead to sit around a votive table.
A votive table. Now, that is a very specific choice of words.
Right, because a votive isn't just a piece of furniture you eat off of. It's an offering.
It's a vow. It implies a sacred, holy space.
Exactly. And the purpose is to give thanks where thanks are due. But the things they give thanks for aren't abstract. The narrator specifically lists song, bread, love, and this is my favorite phrase, dogged hope.
Dogged hope. That adjective changes everything.
It really does. Why do you think he chose dogged?
Well, if you say, beautiful hope or shining hope, it implies something light and easy. But dogged implies endurance.
Like dragging your hope through the mud.
Exactly. It's battered, it's exhausted, but it absolutely refuses to quit. And that sets the perfect tone for the rules of this table.
Oh, the rules of the table are fascinating. It's like the ultimate cosmic potluck dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But instead of a casserole, you bring a sliver of your own existence.
And there are no VIP sections.
None. No place cards, no priority seating based on your earthly status.
It's a radical leveling of humanity. The script explicitly tells you that you might have the good right hand of fellowship on your left, but on your right, you might sit next to an antique pharaoh.
Or a medieval saint. Or a plumber.
Right, a plumber who just got off work installing a sink.
A plumber sitting next to a pharaoh. It's just brilliant. It flattens all of human history into a single democratic circle. And as for the potluck offering, the admission price is totally democratic too.
You can bring something minuscule.
Yeah, one good grape, a grain of cinnamon, Or even a mosquito.
A mosquito fresh from larva.
I mean, a mosquito, really.
It's a brilliant piece of philosophical grounding. A mosquito is a pest, right? It spreads disease. It's an annoyance.
The ultimate annoyance.
But in this grand accounting, it's a living thing that is glad of living. It earns a spot simply because it exists. Corwin is completely redefining what is worthy of the altar.
But wait, I have to jump in here because when I was first reviewing this, I was actually a little confused by the seating arrangement.
Oh, about the empty chair.
Yes. The narrator spends all this time saying the table is round, no hierarchy, everyone is equal. But then he says there is one specific chair that's treated differently. An empty chair.
It's the most crucial architectural detail of the whole imagined space.
Why build an egalitarian table and reserve a special seat? The script says it's reserved for any perfect man, but then it immediately says it's fated to be empty first.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the empty chair is an existential pressure release valve.
How so?
Think about the cultural expectations of a religious gathering or a formal Thanksgiving. There's this underlying pressure to present yourself as pure or sinless or, perfectly put together before you can approach the altar.
Right, you have to be wearing your Sunday best, spiritually speaking.
Exactly. And Corwin shatters that expectation before the meal even begins. By explicitly stating that the chair for the perfect man will remain empty, he is acknowledging that perfection is a myth.
Oh, wow. It's basically saying, look around. Look at the sweaty plumber, the frustrated poet, the arrogant pharaoh. Not a single one of us has a clean record.
It removes moral purity as a prerequisite for gratitude.
You don't have to be a saint to say thank you. You just have to be honest.
If the requirement for true gratitude was perfection, that chair would be the only one at the table. We come to this table with dirty hands, with our failures, and the broadcast says that is perfectly acceptable.
It's the only way humanity can come to the table, and once that foundation is laid, the ritual begins. They need someone to say grace.
And they just casually call on St. Paul.
Just, St. Paul, will you kindly? No big theatrical production. And Paul gives this very humble invocation. He that eateth, eateth unto the Lord, for he giveth God's thanks.
And you'd expect, after a grace like that, for the table to start thanking God for the food. Right?
Yeah, the harvest, the shelter. But the very first massive wave of Thanksgiving is for something entirely different. It's for music.
Yes. The script pivots to this incredible litany praising music. Song as celebration, tuned to joy or woe.
And then we get this sweeping list of instruments. It's like a linguistic symphony, just reading the names aloud.
There he is.
The sitar, the dulcimer, the psaltery, the tabor, the sackbut, and the looping horns. I had to look half of those up.
But consider the psychological effect of this on a listener in 1941.
The contrast, you mean?
Yes. The airwaves were filled with the sounds of modern mechanical terror, the drone of bombers, the screech of sirens. By invoking the sitar and the sackbut, Corwin is pulling the listener out of the panicked present and dropping them into deep antiquity.
Oh, I see. These are the instruments of David, ancient courts. It provides historical continuity.
It's auditory escapism, but with a deeply grounding purpose.
That makes so much sense. And the way he personifies the instruments is so vivid. He praises the basses and cellos, calling them big and buxom bowls.
It's wonderful sensory writing. You can almost feel the vibration of those low strings.
The buxom bowls. And then he specifically highlights the pastoral oboe. He notes that it's essential because it sings of the nostalgia we must always know.
Which is such a specific, complex emotion to assign to an instrument. Nostalgia is a yearning for a home or a time you can't return to.
But all of these manufactured instruments, the ancient ones, they're ultimately just the opening act, aren't they?
They are. The sitar and the dulcimer set the stage for the most complex instrument of all. The biological instrument.
The human voice.
Yes, the text calls it that wondrous instrument which can speak words and give them meaning, inflect them, playing on the mind and spirit.
And the adjectives used here are so striking. The script describes the human voice as various and sweet and pungent. Now seraphim, now Satan.
Sweet and pungent. It's an evocative, almost abrasive combination.
A pungent voice. It lingers in the air.
It has a sharp reality to it, the smell of garlic and sweat. It isn't always pleasant, but it is undeniably aggressively alive.
And that transition from the grand metaphysical table with St. Paul down to the pungent, sweaty reality of the human voice, it's the bridge into the next phase of the play. We zoom in. From the macro of humanity to the hyper-specific everyday voices sitting at the table.
This is where Corwin's genius for observing ordinary life really shines. We meet three distinct working-class voices. the farmer, the clamfisher, and the mother.
Their gratitude is completely stripped of poetry. It's incredibly raw. Let's look at the farmer first.
He is so rooted in the literal dirt. He is thankful for the sun, the rain rising before dawn, the frosty air.
He praises the placid animals he takes care of. He's thankful for his plow and for Indian corn. But what really stands out is what he explicitly refuses to be thankful for.
The realism here prevents the play from becoming sentimental. The farmer clearly states he is not thankful for potato bugs.
And he is absolutely not thankful for maize smut.
Maize smut.
Yeah, I had to look that up too. It's a fungal disease that causes these grotesque gray tumors to grow on corn. It destroys the crop. And here's this farmer at a holy cosmic Thanksgiving feast, basically saying, look, I'm grateful for the corn, but the potato bugs and the fungal rot can take a hike.
It's a hilarious injection of honesty, but it serves a deeper narrative purpose.
To validate the listener.
Exactly. By allowing the farmer to complain about pests, the script validates our own daily frustrations. Gratitude does not require you to pretend the bad things don't exist. You don't have to love the potato bugs to be grateful for the harvest.
Okay, but right after complaining about the bugs, the farmer drops this incredibly poetic line. He says, I'm thankful for the cloud in my heart. That seems contradictory. Why would a tough farmer be thankful for a heavy, lingering sorrow?
Well, this raises a profound question about our emotional ecosystem. Why do you think he values that heaviness?
Is it because a machine doesn't have a cloud in its heart? A plow doesn't feel sorrow? Is the capacity to feel that heaviness the ultimate proof that he's deeply, feelingly alive?
I think that's precisely it. To feel the cloud means you are intimately connected to the reality of the world. He works the dirt, battles blights, feels the frost. He isn't insulated in an artificial paradise.
His gratitude is grounded in reality.
The cloud in his heart is as natural and as necessary as the physical rain that waters his crops. It is the spiritual weather of a life fully lived.
And we see that same grounded reality mirrored in the next voice. The clamfisher. Oh, the clamfisher. If the farmer's about dirt, the clamfisher is a masterclass in the sounds of the sea.
Imagine the sound design in the studio for this.
Oh, must have been incredible. He's thankful for the mud flats at low tide, the salty smell, his clam rake, the spear for snagging eels. He listens to the bell buoy clanging off the shoal.
And listen to the hyper-specific visual detail he dwells on. He likes to think of the thin rim of dried salt on the spit of sand where the last wave breaks when the tide's going out.
A thin rim of dried salt. That is so microscopic. It's not a majestic crashing wave. You only notice dried salt if you spent thousands of hours staring down at the exact same patch of wet sand, waiting for a catch.
It implies a lifetime of quiet, monotonous observation. And notice the cadence of his dialogue. He keeps repeating, I guess, for the flats at low tide, I guess.
He isn't a trained orator. He isn't totally comfortable speaking at this cosmic table.
Right. It's a quiet, shrugging, deeply authentic appreciation for his small, wet corner of the world.
It feels so intimate. But then the broadcast pivots from the physical environment to the intensely emotional environment of the home. We hear from the mother. And her gratitude is completely intertwined with exhaustion.
She is thankful for the love of it. And crucially, she is thankful for the pain of it.
The pain of it. That theme keeps echoing beneath the surface.
Mm.
She lists domestic milestones that most people would consider massive stressors. Teething. The endless trouble of raising children.
And the script throws in a detail that just stops you cold. She gives terrifying medical detail.
Right. She said she is thankful for the cured abscess of the ear which her daughter Emmy had. She talks about how the fever finally broke after they sat up all night for 2 nights without a wink of sleep. It feels so strange to put cured abscess of the ear into a poetic ode.
It shatters the lyrical flow. And that is exactly why it's there. Think about the historical context. In 1941, before penicillin was widely available, a childhood ear abscess wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was terrifying.
It could lead to deafness or death.
Exactly. By putting that raw clinical term into the poem, Corwin grounds the mother's gratitude in stark terror.
The relief you feel when a child's fever breaks after 48 hours of sleepless terror, that isn't a polite thank you. That is a sobbing, collapsing on the floor kind of gratitude.
Exactly. She goes on listing these hard-won victories, thankful for her son Charles getting over being tongue-tied, thankful that Joe the wild boy finally settled down and married a nice girl.
Grateful her husband Donald lived long enough to see their eldest daughter married. And then she gives this beautiful nod to radio itself. She's thankful for the radio when it gets lonely, when the house is snowed in.
All of these details, the maize smut, the dried salt, the ear abscess, they serve a vital structural purpose. They earn the script the right to speak about hope later on.
Right. If Corwin only gave us abstract concepts of divine love, the 1941 listener would have tuned out. It would have felt disconnected from their anxious reality.
But because he gives us the terror of a sick child at 2 a.m., the gratitude feels earned. It's calloused.
I really want you, listening right now, to pause and think about that in the context of your own life. What are your potato bugs? What is your ear abscess? What are those daily grinding annoyances or terrifying little crises you navigate?
It's a radical reframing. You don't sweep those things under the rug to be grateful. You bring them to the votive table.
The relief you feel when the crisis passes, that relief is the sharpest, most defining form of gratitude there is. The shadows make the light visible.
It's a profound psychological insight, and after establishing this earthy, sweaty foundation, the broadcast shifts gears entirely. It lifts our eyes from the mudflats and looks outward to the turning of the earth itself, the seasons.
Specifically October. The text refers to October as the master painter of the year. No Louvre in the world is big enough to hold his landscapes, and the imagery shifts from grounded realism straight into this vivid, almost hallucinogenic surrealism.
The color palette Corwin describes is extraordinary. October gets his greens from the Aegean Sea. His reds come from Yuma, Arizona, but they are matched with the eyes of Bengal tigers.
And the powdered beaks of tropical toucans.
Yes, oranges skimmed from surfaces of rising moons.
Okay, but when I first read that, I was like, wait, isn't that a bit purple? We just spent 10 minutes on the grit of dried salt and ear infections. Now we're talking about toucan beaks. Doesn't that alienate the listener?
It is intensely flowery, but the purpleness of the prose is a deliberate setup. Corwin is actively lulling the listener into a sense of aesthetic wonder. He is building a fragile glass sculpture of autumnal glory in your mind.
Just so he can absolutely smash it to pieces.
Precisely. That aesthetic wonder makes the next moment structurally brilliant. Right in the middle of this beautiful canticle, the illusion is shattered. Violently.
Suddenly, a new voice cuts through, and the Foley directions here must have been intense. The voice is angry, cynical, abrasive. It interrupts the feast and shouts, "Come, come, this is mockery."
It demands to know how everyone can sit breaking bread while famine grins in every land.
How can there be music while the whistling bomb sets pitch for all the sharp-tuned instruments of death?
It's a devastating, necessary critique. The interrupter points out the grotesque absurdity of talking about toucan beaks when the color of the earth is red and growing redder.
It's like someone walking into that cosmic potluck, grabbing the edge of the votive table and just flipping it completely over, plates shattering everywhere.
And the interrupting voice goes further. It asks, are you seriously proposing thanks? Because if Satan himself were at this table, he would be the one giving thanks.
Because his legions are multiplying like festering bacteria. It paints this bloody picture of Charity standing aghast while a million of our brothers are writhing in a puddle of blood.
The script forces the listener to confront the immediate brutal reality of November 1941. It describes the bombers overhead as new fallen angels plummeting from the skies like a malignant hail. It asks the ultimate question of theodicy. How can you possibly give thanks in a world that allows this industrial slaughter?
Which is a totally fair question. Does this interrupting voice actually have the moral high ground here? Is it a form of delusion to sit around talking about rising moons when there are literal bombs falling on children's hospitals?
That is the central agonizing tension of the entire broadcast. And Corwin doesn't shy away from it. He gives the darkness some of the most powerful language in the script. He lets the despair speak fully, but then the script responds.
And it doesn't respond by denying the darkness. It doesn't pat the interrupter on the head and say, cheer up.
No, it acknowledges the interlocking fury and the festering bacteria. But it makes a profound philosophical counterattack. It argues that no empire built of darkness and disease of soul shall give us pause.
It claims that the interlocking fury of free men will act like a blinding, sterilizing shaft of light. It asks, what comes of festering bacteria in the sunlight? It burns away.
The play makes a crucial civic distinction. It admits the presence of evil, but it utterly denies the supremacy of evil. It refuses to let the warlords have the final word on the human experience.
And that sets up what I think is the most incredible metaphor in this entire piece. The text talks about this underlying truth of human dignity. It says this truth was mixed into the molten ores of the earth when the planet was forming. It awaits extraction, and this is the phrase, like a rare but mighty radium deep in the bowels of the earth.
Radium. Now this raises an important point about how the 1940s mind viewed truth and hope. Today, radium is a dangerous historical curiosity. But in 1941, it was viewed with profound awe and terror.
It was almost magical, right? Treating cancers, making dials glow.
But also deeply dangerous. It required massive, grueling effort to extract from tons of pitchblende.
Yes, that's the analogy. Hope in a burning world is not a dandelion. You don't casually pluck it on a sunny picnic. Hope is radium. You have to put on a hard hat, take a pickaxe, and go deep into the crushing bowels of the earth to find it.
It requires back-breaking labor to extract it from the darkness. That is a perfect reading. And once you hold that refined truth, the text says you will never be countervailed, even if crucifixion tests it.
The fundamental truth they extract is the unbreakable bond of humanity. Brothers are not for long divisible. That is the radium. And to prove this point, the broadcast introduces a new character. The Wanderer.
The Wanderer steps up and says, I verified this thing. He explains he was born in exile. He belongs to a race that lives in every clime and under every flag except its own.
And instead of a speech, he sounds an instrument, older and rougher than the sitar, the shofar, the ram's horn.
From a sound design perspective, it is startling. It's raw. It's unrefined. In Jewish tradition, it was used to sound the alarm of war and to call the community to deep repentance.
And the text takes us on a breathtaking historical montage following the sound of this horn. Through the plains of Shinar, Mount Sinai, Egypt, Jericho, Rome, through pogroms, ghettos, and the fires of the Inquisition.
What Corwin is doing here is masterful. He is using the survival of the Jewish people who were at that very moment facing annihilation in Europe as the definitive proof of human resilience.
The interrupter argued the bombers have won, and the Wanderer responds by sounding the horn, essentially saying, my people have survived pharaohs and inquisitors. The empires that tried to crush us are dust, and we are still here.
And the text notes the horn sounds above the blare of trumpets and the brass of hatred. Those instruments of empire are loud and terrifying, but they are temporary. The ram's horn outlasts them all.
And in surviving, the meaning of the sound transforms. What started as a cry of anguish becomes the horn of benediction.
From alarm to benediction, that is the alchemy of survival. The trauma doesn't disappear. It gets woven into the blessing.
I really want you, listening right now, to reflect on that. Think about your own family's history, the long-term hardships you've endured. How often do the symbols of our deepest past struggles become the exact instruments of our future benediction?
The scar becomes the testimony.
Exactly. That is the radium extracted from the dark earth, hard-earned hope. And after this massive historical sweep, the broadcast suddenly contracts again. It moves down to the quietest, most fragile margins of human existence, the foothills of sleep.
The foothills of sleep. What an evocative phrase. The microphone focuses on a 92-year-old woman. She says her eyes are dim, her hearing is poor. She is residing in the foothills of sleep before reaching the mountains.
It's a gentle metaphor for natural death. The mountains are the crossing over. And her gratitude is retrospective. She remembers a dress she wore at Lincoln's second inaugural ball,
which anchors her in the deep history of the nation. She lived through the Civil War. But then she pivots to a snowy sleigh ride with a man named Edward under Mount Toby.
The historical and the intimate. The birth of her son Ralph, and then the devastating memory of little Edwina dying of diphtheria.
She doesn't filter out the tragedy of losing a child. It's part of the tapestry. And despite the loss, she has this lighthearted acceptance. She jokes she's a Minuteman, ready to depart at a moment's notice.
It's a beautiful surrender to the natural cycle. But Corwin doesn't let us rest there, because death isn't always a gentle mountain you climb in your 90s. The very next voice shatters that tranquility.
It is arguably one of the most chilling shifts I've ever encountered. A chorus of voices apologizing for their appearance at the table. They are the newly dead.
They say they are one of 100 who were stood one bright morning between a dozen muzzles and a wall.
A firing squad. A mass execution. The contrast is violent and highly intentional. The 92-year-old dying naturally in bed versus the unnatural snuffing out of life by the machinery of fascism.
The sensory details they provide are haunting. They speak from the ground where they were lowered, a mid-November rain cautioning the earth that winter is coming. Winter in the bone, winter in the flesh.
And they don't mourn lost wealth. They mourn the sensory experience of simply being alive. The tug of the wind, the swaying grass, the laughter of children, the look of day breaking in the east.
But this wrecks me. Every time they are at the votive table, they haven't been excluded, they have an offering. They whisper their thankfulness with dust upon our lips.
And what are they thankful for? Not harvested corn or memories?
They are thankful for one thing, that they have been noted, that good men have noted their sacrifice, and they shall not be forgotten.
For this much, thanks. the most profound humility. Their gratitude is reduced to the barest atom of hope, human memory. They are trusting the listener by the radio to hold their unjust death in mind.
The broadcast manages to hold space for both realities, the beautiful cycles of a long life and the horrific disruptions of violence. Both have a rightful place at the table.
And that accumulating weight builds to the climax. The narrator returns and addresses the macro audience, the sons of men, daughters of the mingled lovers of the many tribes.
The text looks, November 1941, dead in the eye. The narrator says, "What year this is we shall not soon forget." He predicts it will skulk among the blackest annals ever printed.
Historical clairvoyance. To possess the clarity to say into a microphone, future generations will look back at this exact year as one of the darkest times in history. There are no barefoot pleasures in these hobnailed times.
Hobnailed times. The metal studs on military boots. The mechanized marching of soldiers. And then comes the final sweeping Thanksgiving. The narrator repeats the warning. The world is burning. We smell the smoke. We feel the scorching air.
But the response is a fierce, militant gratitude. This is a crucial pivot. The writer G.K. Chesterton once wrote about gratitude as a form of rebellion against despair. That is exactly what Corwin is staging here.
This isn't writing a play thank you note. This is the aggressive gratitude of a warrior. Listen to what they are thankful for in this graceless year. They are thankful for the strong joy of the challenge.
Thankful for defiance in the nostril.
And the weapon in the hand. They are thankful for the clenching of the fist. Gratitude has completely morphed. The act of clenching your fist in the face of tyranny is framed as holy praise.
Working the steel mills, the rifle factories arming the free world, elevated to the same sacred level as the singing of the cithara.
It's the ultimate synthesis. We started with the pastoral oboe and the clam fisher. We descended into aerial bombardment and the firing squad. And we emerged with hard-earned, ironclad resolve. Gratitude as the fuel for survival.
The spiritual energy required to fight back the darkness.
Arise now and give thanks where thanks are due. It's a spiritual call to arms. It leaves you breathless. But the broadcast doesn't end there, because there's the network outro. The announcer steps in.
He confirms this was the final show of the 26 by Corwin series. He praises the history of the Columbia Workshop, finding new talent, broadcasting regional shows, documents, fantasies, operas.
It's a reminder of what a golden age of experimentation radio was, an intellectual laboratory.
It fundamentally trusts the listener. It believes the everyday person, the clerk, the mother by the radio, can grasp the concept of truth as a radium. It elevates the audience to the level of the poet.
Exactly. So let's pull all of this together. We've got on quite a journey tonight on The Open Door. From a cosmic potluck with an empty chair, through the gritty details of a farmer's dirt,
through the violent interruption of war, the ancient blast of the shofar,
and arrived at the defiant gratitude of a clenched fist. It's a masterclass in holding opposing truths simultaneously. The world is burning, and yet the crocus still pushes through the frost.
Both demand our attention and our emotional honesty.
So when you are going through your own dark year, whether a global crisis on the news or your own personal maze smut, how can you reframe your perspective? Can you find that defiance in the nostril?
The strength to be grateful for the resilience it takes to face the hard things. As Chesterton alluded to, the most profound rebellion against despair is refusing to stop giving thanks.
But I want to leave you with one final lingering thought. We focus on that empty chair reserved for the perfect man. We said it levels the playing field. But what if we look at it differently?
How so?
What if the chair is empty? Because true, defiant gratitude, the kind that looks at a burning world and clenches a fist in praise, actually requires us to be fundamentally flawed. What if you need to be scarred and completely entwined in the messy, painful reality of the world to even understand what hope is?
That's a profound thought.
In a truly dark year, maybe perfection is the one thing we absolutely don't need.
Until next time, keep digging for that radium.
Good night from Atchison. Keep your radios on and keep searching for the light.